Welcome to All Autism Talk, connecting the autism community one podcast at a time. Our podcast offers friendly conversations with inspiring individuals in the autism community. All Autism Talk is brought to you by Learn Behavioral and the Learn Provider Network. Now, here's your host.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode. In the spirit of Mother's Day and in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month, I had an opportunity to sit down with three amazing women and moms. They share some incredible insights about what it's like to parent in a neurodivergent family, but also how they're juggling their personal and professional lives. I really love this format and took away a lot of insight from my conversations with Heather Link, Liza Hellenbrand, and Arfa Alam. Heather Link is a mom of an autistic child, and she's also a clinical director for Autism Spectrum Therapies, one of the brands in the Learn Behavioral Network. Liza Hellenbrand is a parent of a 21-year-old son with autism, and she hosts the Empowered Caregiver podcast. And Arfa Alam is a returning guest from a recent episode, and she is a parent advocate and parents in a neurodivergent family. I hope you enjoy this episode with those three moms. Hey ladies, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so glad to have each of you.
Thanks for having us here. Thanks for having us. But they were so scared of talking on top of each other that none of us talk.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's going to happen. So this week's episode is going to be a little bit different because we have a panel of parents, a panel of moms. And I'm really excited to get your perspectives, hear your perspectives, and learn from each of you. But before we dive in, I want to make sure that our audience knows each of you. I've spent time with most of you, and so I want them to get to know you a little bit the way I know you. So Heather, if you could start, introduce yourself a little bit and maybe share a little bit about your family.
Of course. My name is Heather Link. I am a clinical director and a BCBA at Autism Spectrum Therapies in San Diego. I have a son with autism. My favorite title is mom or mommy. Sometimes even the screaming of mom. I'll take them all. I've been on both sides of receiving ABA and providing it. And so my aspect of, supporting families goes very, very deep, and it's very personal to me because I want to make sure that we're just supporting everyone the best way that we possibly can.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Heather. Arfa Alam, you've been on our podcast recently, and so our guests may be familiar with you from a recent episode, but if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. My name is Arfa Alam, and I am a first-generation Muslim American based outside of the Washington, D.C. area. I have a very neurologically diverse family. So I am the mom of three kiddos, and my oldest, she had epilepsy. She's recently outgrown it. My sons are both autistic, and my husband also has a neurological diagnosis. He has Parkinson's disease. In addition to that, I was born with a twin sister who is deaf. So as I mentioned in my podcast a couple of weeks ago, I've always been deeply passionate and ingrained in this world of different abilities and caregiving and advocacy and allyship. So I'm really excited to be here, especially with two other women doing phenomenal work in this space.
Liza, go for it. You're up.
Sorry. I'm Liza Hellenbrand. I am in Madison, Wisconsin. I have a son that will be 21 with autism. He was diagnosed when he was 2 years old. And at that time in our state, insurance did not cover ABA therapy. So I was his ABA team in the early years. So I too kind of see things from the different perspectives. And I became through this journey, I would say, a really strong advocate, and I do a weekly radio show called the Empowered Caregiver, because what I learned on my caregiving journey, or at some point in my caregiving journey, is how much autism and any disability can impact the caregiver or the caretaker. So I do a lot of advocacy work around caregiving.
That's great. Thank you, Liza. I'll make sure that we have links to your podcast in our show notes for today. And actually, Liza, I want to start with you for my first question. moms are pulled in so many different directions. And just from each of your introductions, I can tell that you are pulled in personal directions and making sure your family is getting all that they need, and professional directions and making sure that you're feeling growth and challenged and that you're contributing to society as a whole. How do you juggle that, Liza? How do you make sure that like you do all that without burning the candle at both ends?
I'm not sure I have that mastered, or even that it's always going really, really smoothly. But I think it's just about prioritizing, what's important to you, and really learning to let some things go so that you can focus on your family and what you want to accomplish. But I wish I had a secret trick to share with how you manage everything, but I'm asking the same question myself.
Heather, you look like you were going to expand on that. Is there something you wanted to share?
I actually heard this from you, and you said, 1 week, I'm a great parent. 1 week, I'm an amazing husband. 1 week, I'm killing it at work. It's really difficult to do it all. And that resonated with me so much. I remember you saying it years ago, and now I'm like, oh my goodness, I understand what he was explaining to me years ago. So I try to just focus on which one I'm going to tackle, because you can't do it all. And so if I'm in the home, I have to be present for like my children, and I need to set specific time aside for my friends and for my husband. And it's just putting it in a schedule for me, because I am very routine based. My son's very routine based. And so naturally, that's just how our schedule is. And so I have to schedule everything and have specific time to make sure that I can feel that quality time with everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I forgot that we had that conversation until just now. But now that you're saying that, I don't know that I've gotten any better at that today than I did when we talked about it. But to your point about a schedule, I feel like I schedule everything for me, right? I have to schedule, even for myself, I schedule time to check in with my kids before school. When they first wake up, and then after school, and then right before bed. Arfa, do you have a similar thing where you had to schedule time to check in with everybody and make sure you're kind of, navigating all the avenues of your life?
Yeah, I don't know that I schedule so much. For me, it kind of happens organically throughout the day. One thing that I really try to focus on is just being present in whatever it is that I'm doing, which I know is impossible for us as moms, because even right now I'm thinking about, okay, the kids' bus is going to be here in 45 minutes. So after this, I need to do X, Y, Z. But I really do try to be present. But also, something that was just life-changing for me once I realized it after I became a mom is no one is doing it all perfectly. No one is. And that's okay, because we are human beings. We are not machines. So something that's really helped me over the years is literally just taking it day by day. Every day that my husband and I get through another day and we have a roof over our heads and our bellies are full and our kids are safe, we are like, we made it. Like, that was a good day, and we're going to get up again tomorrow and try it again. I think that's something that really helps me just kind of balance everything.
And as you're describing it, I'm thinking like those are the priorities of every day, right? A roof over my head and a full belly, that's a luxury for a large part of the world. And so for us to make sure that those things are checked is really a gift on its own. And I love that that refocusing of that balance, right? There are days where we didn't get the homework done, and that's going to be okay, right? And I think what I'm hearing from you, Arfa, is give yourselves a little bit of grace to be able to say, maybe we didn't hit everything on the checklist or everything on the to-do list today, but we made some progress on these things, and we got the most important things taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I have learned anything from my parents, watching them raising a daughter with disabilities as immigrants to this country during a time where there was much less awareness around special needs and inclusion and accessibility, it is that life is always going to be life. Like, it's always going to be lifing, as young people say on the internet these days. There's always going to be a million things to do. And so you just got to focus on what's important and be at peace with the fact that there will always be 101 things that are still left to do on your to-do list.
Yeah, 100, maybe 101 is a low estimate on my to-do list, but I appreciate that. One thing that I keep thinking of, and Heather, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, so I want to hear your perspective on this, is this mom guilt of just exactly what we've been talking about, which is I didn't get to everything today, or I wasn't fully present in this moment today, or the dishes are there, or I struggle with those things as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what mom guilt is for you and how you face it?
Oh gosh, I feel like I feel it probably way too much. It's usually just all my thoughts in my head, though. They're not real. They're just thoughts. I've actually have pulled in some ACT training just to kind of get me through some of these things, because I don't want to get hung up on the day and not be able to progress in what I need to do because I'm so upset about something that happened in the past. So when I am having those thoughts, I do say it out loud. I go for a walk, like, these are the thoughts that I'm saying to myself. Like, they're not real. They're just thoughts in my head. I also am very lucky that I have a very great support group of other moms, and we are all very real. And we constantly text each other about the real things that are happening in life. And it is zero judgment. And that's what we need. So I have a very safe space, which is really needed, I think, as a parent. I never knew how challenging this would be. I would never change it. I love every single second of it, even when I'm having a bad day. And then another thing that me and my husband are actually working on together is just to celebrate the wins. So I sometimes come home and I unfortunately will kind of unleash on him, like, this happened today and this happened today and we have to do this and we have to do that. And he's like, stop. Let's talk about 5 great things that just happened today. And it honestly has really helped me. But unfortunately, I guess I lean on everybody else to help me. But it's working.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't know, Liza, I feel like you have some experience with making sure you've got a community around you. And I think you've built a community for other people. So what's your thought on that?
Well, I think community is huge. I mean, it takes a village, right? And that's what really can get us through some of our darkest moments. So I think that is an important part of the journey. And, you know, I agree with so much of everything actually that Heather said in regards to mom guilt. And I was, as she was answering, thinking of the different stages that I went through with my son being 20 and you know, really what got me through. And for me, a big part of it is just reminding myself I am doing the best that I can. I'm doing the best that I can, and that's all I can do.
I like that thought of doing the best I can. I saw something recently that said, if all you have to give today is 40% and you give all of that, then you gave 100% that day. And I'm hearing that from each of you. You're all shaking your heads. No one can see that, but I can. But it's just, there are days where, man, we're tired. You know, I'll confess, if I don't get a cup of coffee in the morning, right, I'm not going to be at my best. Or if I didn't eat the times I usually do. And those are when my kids get to see the not best in me. You're all shaking your heads again, so I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I also just think what Heather said about having a safe space, and Liza, you reiterated that by stating that your community is such an important part of this journey. It cannot be understated, I think. I think there's something so powerful in realizing, and again, Richie, this is something we spoke about a couple weeks ago, but just the interconnectedness between human beings, our shared humanity, our shared experiences. You know, every time I talk to my mom or one of my girlfriends or a colleague or one of my cousins, and I realize like, oh, I'm not the only mom going through this. I'm not the only parent who feels bad for yelling at their kid right before they got on their bus and then going to work with that guilt. There are literally millions of us, right? And I also like to remind myself that I sit on the shoulders of thousands, maybe millions of ancestors before me who walked this journey of parenthood. So for me, that is a really powerful thing. And it centers me a lot, knowing that, you know what, this is just part of the human experience. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us, right? Even though I think these feelings, they're very natural and they're very, very real. But I feel very blessed to be in a situation like Heather was saying, where I've had those safe spaces. And I do think, community, it's so important. And I feel like we should be talking about the need for community more in these conversations with caregivers and families, because we are experiencing right now a crisis of loneliness in our country and across the world. And I think we need to actually say this out loud, right? And find ways to build that community for all of us, but especially for those of us who are in these special situations, like we're parents and caregivers to people who have really unique needs.
I want to highlight one thing you said, Arfa Alam. You didn't say find the community. You said build the community. And Heather, your eyes kind of lit up when she said that. Can you tell us a little bit, Heather, how you've built this community around you, and how you've built that network of safe people where you can just be open and honest?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I just loved everything that Arfa just said. That was beautiful. And I wish you could write it down. I think I need to read that on a daily basis, honestly. For me, I feel like I just honestly got lucky. I met certain people that had similar age kids, and then I moved into a neighborhood that just already had a community. And unfortunately, like, it's lovely that I have them. And we all just realized that we had similar situations, and we never would have known unless we said something. And honestly, I think a lot of these relationships were built during COVID, when we all just had to sit outside of our homes and we would just wave to each other as we passed by. But that's when I really started to feel a community and learn about them. And then we started, school together and realized how difficult it was for kids who have been at home for 2 years. And then we're finding out that they had all these diagnoses that we didn't even know about. So we kind of just have been doing it together. And I don't know if that helps anybody else, but reach out to others. It's the best thing to have that.
Yeah, I think it helps. I mean, I think, COVID presented a lot of challenges for a lot of people. And I think for you, Heather, just knowing you took the opportunity to say, great, we can't maybe go and do some of the things we would normally do. So how do we make the best of this situation? And how do we make sure that we're still thriving in the moment, right? It may not be what we were expecting. It may not be perfect, but it's the best that we can do today. And I think that's a very realistic summary. And I think you've done a great job of that. I think along the lines of what you were saying, Arfa, I want to come back to the crisis of loneliness and this idea of all of our mental health and parents' mental health and mom's mental health. And I want to hear from you and Liza on this. What are ways that families can be, besides building a community, what are other ways that moms can be taking care of themselves while they're taking care of so many others?
Well, I think, if I'm being truly honest, I wouldn't have taken care of myself if there weren't people around me who had reminded me to do that and told me not only should you do this and it's okay for you to do this, but you absolutely must do this. I feel that in itself was such a tremendous blessing that I had my parents, my in-laws, my husband. I have a huge extended family, friends, colleagues who reminded me that I needed to take care of myself during the hardest period of my life, which was during the pandemic, because that was when my family was dealing with 4 diagnoses at once. Moms, we don't always remember when we're in the middle of the storm that we need to prioritize our mental health. And I think this goes back to this idea of community and, frankly, what we owe each other. And I know that is something maybe some of our listeners may disagree with. We live in a time where, especially on social media, there is a lot of rhetoric around individuals don't owe each other anything and you do you. And I respectfully disagree with that sentiment. I think that I owe my fellow human beings everything that I was blessed with. I owe it to people to pay it forward because others have done that for me. And so what I would encourage listeners to think about, especially if you're a listener who maybe isn't the parent of a child with special needs or you're not a caregiver, think about the people in your life who are in those circumstances and how you might be able to show up for them. I remember when we were in the middle of the pandemic, one of my cousins one day just said, start with 5 minutes, Arfa. Just start giving yourself 5 minutes a day. And that literally changed my life because the next day I went on YouTube, I searched a 5-minute workout video. And today I'm back to a point where I'm running races and I'm doing HIIT workouts that I hadn't done for years because I just stopped taking care of myself.
Good for you. Good for you.
I think that Arfa said that beautifully again. And I'm not sure what I would add to it other than just to reiterate the importance of taking care of yourself. And, that kind of plays into earlier conversation about guilt. And, as mothers, as caregivers of parents of special needs children, we give, not even thinking that we need to take care of ourselves. So that was a huge realization for me. And it took me a long time to get there. I feel like a late bloomer in that department. But I have to have my own life and my own interests and my own needs as well. Otherwise, I can't show up for those that I love in the way that I want to.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. I don't think of you as a late bloomer, Liza. I think of you as a path creator for others, right? I think it's an opportunity for them to be able to learn from what wasn't there before. You built something that not everyone could have accessed. So I appreciate that from you.
Can I just add to that, Liza? I mentioned before we started recording, I listened to your the Empowered Caregivers podcast. And as I was listening to that, I was thinking that mothers like me with young children today, we do stand on the shoulders of women like you who have been on this journey alone with far fewer resources. And you really paved the way to make our journeys much easier.
Well, thank you. And just to date myself even more, I will say that when my son was diagnosed, the internet was fairly new. I mean, it was out there, but it didn't have the wealth of information that it had today. And the first pamphlet that I was given about autism, I think it was dated, but still, it was still, being circulated, said like 1 in 1,000 kids were on the spectrum. And there was no social media. So, wow. And I didn't discover this on my own. I give a huge thanks to the parents of older children, even, back then, almost 20 years ago. I relied so heavily on them because so many of today's resources weren't available. And again, that kind of just goes back to your community, right? And being there for you.
I'm hearing that 1 in 1,000, and that number is different today. I think last I heard was 1 in 36. Is that right? Yes, I'm seeing shake your heads. Yeah, that seems, forgive me if that was incorrect, everyone, but I think that's the number that we're on today. Liza, I want to stay with you for just a moment, and particularly because your son is older, right? And I want to hear a little bit about how you handled some of those transitions from school to school, from school to adulthood, from place to place, any of those. I think those transitions are particularly hard for families in particular, and any advice you have for moms, I think, would be appreciated on that.
Oh, wow. I almost don't know where to begin with that one. But I think in the back of my mind, and this doesn't sound overly loving and motherly, and I had that too, but in the back of my mind, I thought if this kiddo is going to reach maximum, independence, he needs to be employed. He's not from a family of money, unfortunately, and unless he wins the lottery. And not only that, it's such a meaningful, important part of people's lives. So I always kept that in the back of my mind. So I remember when he was about 12, volunteering with him in the community to build some resume experience and to get some of those work skills. And then in our state, I'm not sure if it's different by state, but you can start working at 14. And so when he was 14, he got his first job washing dishes at a pizza joint in town. And he just blossomed. I mean, wow, did he take independence by the horns, and even today he's a very independent man. And I'm thinking, oh, I should have never got him that first job, but he ran with it. And I think it's really creating that self-determination at a young age. So many of these kiddos, have their visual schedules and they are kind of told what to do. And I get it. And we went through that, and that's all necessary, but it doesn't really give them the time to think about, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want for me? So I started having those conversations really early, so that he could lay out a game plan. It's his life. It's not mine. So just planting those seeds and thinking about, where do you want to live? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want middle school to look like? And giving him what he needed to be able to pull that information out. And then we came up with a plan and kind of tackled it. And some of it, we fell flat on our face, easy for me to say, but we learned along the way.
Liza, I love that you said, letting him kind of pick what his path is, because it is his life. It's not ours. But I do think when you have a family, you have a vision of what your family is going to be. And then when it doesn't match, that misalignment is really difficult, but you just have to push through it, because it's not your life. And even if your child was neurotypical, it's still not your life. So I love that you supported him and what he wanted. And I look at that with my own son too, just with his special interests. They do change, but they go hard for a good year or so, but we just feed into it. I am totally fine talking weather and numbers and sleep scores with my son for hours. I don't care if it's the same question. We could shape it. We could ask it a different way. I am his safe space. So he's allowed to do that with me. I'll teach him, maybe your friends don't want to talk about sleep scores for an hour, but with me, I am here for you and I'll do it with you.
Wait, I don't want us to diverge, but what's a sleep score, Heather?
Oh my goodness. He's just really into numbers. And so I wear my Fitbit at night. And he said he wasn't sleeping before. He said that sleeping's hard. He doesn't like sleeping. And I know he does have a very difficult time sleeping, and we'll wake up for a few hours each night. So I put my Fitbit on him to see where his sleep is. Is he getting deep sleep? When is he waking up, to see if we could kind of help him? And so now he has his own Fitbit. I wear mine. We compare sleep scores in the morning. He likes to beat me. It's cute.
That's great. I love that you have that conversation. And I know you can dive into that with him. I know you will.
Always.
That makes me think of something, and I hadn't thought of this before, but given how technology has changed and advanced over the years, how has that made things easier or more stressful for any of you?
I actually have a I was thinking about this, Richie, before our conversation, and there is something very particular that comes to mind right now, and that is social media. Social media is, as we all know, it is such a mixed blessing, because on the one hand, I love it to keep in touch with my cousins in Pakistan and to be connected to the advocacy space and to learn random things about gardening and miniature baking and other things that I didn't realize I needed to know information
You need
about.
to know that.
And at the same time, it can be such an incredibly dangerous and toxic place. And I would not have gotten to where I am, or we as a family wouldn't have gotten to where we are in our journey with Parkinson's and autism, especially during the pandemic, if it wasn't for the internet and if it wasn't for social media, because I just devoured the free resources that those spaces offered to me. But now I'm at a place now where, just last week, Heather and Liza, I deleted my social media apps from my phone. I purposely made it harder for myself to access those apps. Now I have to go into Safari and, do it the old school way. And once you do that, like Instagram and Facebook, they're so much less accessible. But I had to do that because there is, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but Richie, we talked about this a few weeks ago. There's just so much vitriol on social media around autism and autism parenting and ABA and this and that, coupled with the fact that, everyone on social media, they're either showing the best snapshots of their life. So you'll see these moms and it seems like they've got everything together, right? And that just makes you feel like fill in the blank, right? Yeah. Or something that I was starting to get a lot of was sometimes, especially in the autism space, in my opinion, it can feel a little too doom and gloom. I think it's one thing to acknowledge the extremely hard reality of family dynamics and roles and responsibilities, all the complexities that come with that when you have individuals with special needs in your family, right? But it's a completely other thing to tell individuals or make them feel like their life is over, there's no hope, your son or daughter is confined to these things forever because of this diagnosis, and this is a death sentence for you all. So it was becoming too much, and I had to remove that from my life, and I'm so glad I did, because I'm already feeling so much better.
Good for you. I did that not that long ago and just felt this relief, this weight just kind of lifted. And I found myself actually with more time. I was like, why am I scrolling? I don't even care what I'm looking at. I'm just scrolling for the sake of it. But yeah, good for you. Not everyone could see that, but you got some applause from other moms when you shared that, Arfa. I don't know if you saw that as well. Liza, go ahead.
I have an ADHD diagnosis, so social media and the internet in general is a slippery, dangerous slope. So I can totally relate to so much of what Arfa said. In the world, I think technology, big picture, and taking into consideration autism and my son's experience, given that he's now an adult, I'm very thankful because he is able to use public transit thanks to an app, that he can use. So it makes life accessible for him. We have the ability to text and, connect over the internet. So again, that allows him to live independently and still have that connection. So it's been great. in a lot of different ways in our autism journey, even when it comes to some of his learning difficulties and struggles, being able to connect with learning specialists via Zoom, which, wasn't always possible. So there's a lot of upside. It's just definitely the social media part is, it's a blessing and a curse.
I want to switch gears for a second. I appreciate everyone's insight on social media, but I feel like we could talk about that. That should be its own episode altogether at some point, which we'll get to another time. But I'm curious, from any of you, how do you handle the conversations with others of your children, right? Other children, right? How do you juggle going to multiple therapy sessions and spending time with extra drop-offs and pickups and all of those things? How do you handle that as a family unit? Liza, please go ahead.
I remember, so my son is going to be 21 and I have a younger son that's 17 and I have a daughter that's actually going to be 30. So a wide range here of experiences. And our younger son had to go to, therapy appointment after therapy, over and over. And I could feel the resentment building up with him. And I think he was starting to feel that, I loved my son with autism more. That's all I cared about because he kind of consumed me, which
Right.
he did. And I just remember telling him one time, I love you just as much. And I know it looks like I'm giving all my time and attention to your brother, but he needs me. And the more that we can get him independent and on his own, the less, quite frankly, you're going to have to take on yourself when you're an adult. And, unfortunately, I'm no longer here. So I'm not doing this because I love him more. I'm doing this because I love you both. And it's important to both of you that he gets the help that he needs.
How was that conversation received, Liza? How did he receive that?
I kept trying to think of the age that he was at the time, but I think he got it, and to this day, I think he understands, oh yeah, we all need to rally around and we just need to do what needs to be done, because the more time and effort we put up front, hopefully, right, the less we need to deal with down the road.
Heather, were you going to add to that?
I feel like my experience was just different because we had in-home ABA. It was still during COVID. I was able to work from home. So, COVID was scary. It wasn't a great time, but for what we needed at that moment, I was able to be flexible and be there for my son and still be able to work. So I still see that time was actually very, very valuable to us. But yeah, that's just hard when you have the sibling too, that you're trying to make sure that they both feel loved and special. And I don't know if I have the answers either. I love what Liza said and how she explained it to her child. I think all I've done is just really, really explaining that we all need space at certain times. And if we're all having a hard time, we have to be kind and caring to one another. And so we practice that a lot in our house. So if there are difficult times for my son or even my daughter, they do it to each other and they're compassionate. And I think that's the greatest value that I've taught them, so they can make sure that they're supporting one another as they continue to grow.
Right. One thing, a dear friend of mine told me that he makes it a point to go on dad dates with his neurotypical son. And so then that way there's the time dedicated for therapies and OT and ABA and all those other things, of course, but they go out for burgers and ice cream and it's just the two of them, or it's a smaller group. Not everyone gets to go. And so just to block off that time. All right. I have a million more questions, but I won't ask all of them. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, Heather, and I want to hear from each of you something. Heather, you were bringing up coming home from work and kind of just downloading all the stressors of the day, and that your community and your husbands remind you to celebrate the successes. And I think that's such an important message, to celebrate successes. So I just want to hear from each of you. a success story that you celebrated, maybe how you celebrated it, maybe what stood out to you in that moment. It can be recent, it can be from a long time ago. I just don't want us to lose sight of those.
I could explain one. I mean, I don't even know if this is a success story, but it felt in the moment not years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, my son wanted to go to Legoland. And so me and my husband, we took time off, we scheduled it, we bought the tickets. It's very expensive, my goodness. Planned to go with friends. And we get there and immediately my son is completely overwhelmed. He's crying. He doesn't want to be there. But we tried to get in to show him different things. And it was just a horrible day. It was a bad experience. We ended up leaving. And as we were in the car, of course, I'm like wiping away my tears because I wanted this special moment with my family. And he goes, "Mom, can we try Legoland again? I promise I won't cry." And I was like, "Oh, honey, we could go to Legoland whenever you want." So it's nice to see that I wasn't doing something bad. I'm experiencing things with him. And he tells me when he's ready, and I love that. And if he's not ready that day, that's okay.
I'm leaving my camera on mute because now I'm going to cry. Thanks for that, Heather. I appreciate that. No, I think that's a beautiful story. I think that is a success. Did you guys go back another time?
Oh my goodness, no, we didn't go back. But we have tried so many things now because he's realizing, I don't even know, that he can communicate and I will tell him, like, whatever you tell me, I'm going to follow. We always have game plans before we go. So I think he just feels safe that he could try new things. And if he's not ready, like, we're going to honor that.
So maybe you didn't make it back to Legoland, but you've had a whole wealth of experiences since then that you wouldn't have had you not had that experience.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Arfa, I'm coming to you next. Did you have a story you wanted to share?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, Richie, because I guess I could, I'm thinking of some specific instances right now, but I even just think where we are right now in our life and the way we're able to live our day to day, that for me is a success in itself. It is such an absolute blessing when I think back to where this journey started. And I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember April 1st, 2020 so vividly because everything was shut down. And I looked at the calendar and I was like, oh my goodness, we have 6 weeks of lockdown left. And I am a person of faith. So I remember talking to God in that moment. And I was like, I cannot see the end of the tunnel right now, but I know I won't be here forever. And I can't believe that now I am actually living that, because for me, it is such a gift the way I'm living my life now. I am working in a job that is meaningful and that I'm really passionate about. My kids go to school or ABA every day. They're safe, they're healthy, they're pretty happy. They still have challenges that they're dealing with, and we're working through those things. But by and large, I feel like we're just living our family life that one lives when you have little kids. And I can do things like go to the grocery store with all 3 kids by myself now. And I don't take those things for granted for a single second, because I know there was a time where I wasn't able to do that. But fortunately, with the resources my kids have had access to, especially the ABA, we are at a point now. Do you all know I even flew with all 3 kids by myself a couple of months ago, and it was an utter success. No meltdowns, nothing. And I could not have fathomed doing that a couple of years ago. So I hope there is a mom out there who is listening who might be in the depths of darkness like I was on April 1st, 2020. And I hope what that mom will take away from all of us is that you're not going to be, darkness is not static, or, it moves. So you're not going to be in that depth of darkness forever. And there are things out there, resources out there, and people out there that will help you get to your point of success.
Beautifully said, Arfa.
Yeah, I was just going to add, that's a tough one because I had so many success stories going through my head. I mean, which one should I share? Which one should I share? Which just made me think generally that, you can find a success story within every day if you look hard enough. So it would be hard for me to narrow it down to one. But as somebody that has seen the autism journey, through infancy, all the way through adulthood, I constantly remind myself that my kiddo went to kindergarten pretty nonverbal and in diapers, and he is now living independently at college for a program of students with intellectual disabilities. So he's not seeking a degree, but he's taking classes and learning life skills and living independently. So just the whole to me is always just a great feeling of success, because we all worked hard and he worked really hard too. And I think it was a whole family effort, and in my mind, we did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful stories from each of you. Thank you for sharing those. I'm speechless on so many accounts. I took multiple pages of notes. I think I say that often on this podcast, but today, this episode really meant a lot to me. And I just appreciate each of you being willing to share. I know I'm late, but happy Mother's Day to each of you and to all the moms out there listening. Thank you for doing what you do. We appreciate having you on, and we want to have you back. This was a blast for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Heather and Liza and Richie. It was really such an honor to share this platform with two other amazing moms.
I hope you took away as much as I did from that conversation with Heather, Liza, and Arfa. A couple of things stood out to me, and the first one is just the spirit of giving and listening that each one of them brought to this conversation. They hadn't met each other beforehand, and they really gave each other, I think, a unique spirit of honor in each of their journeys and in each of the stories that they shared. I thought that was truly special and something that doesn't always happen in a format like this. The other thing that stood out to me was we sort of got a glimpse into the future from today. And Arfa and Heather are both parents of young children, while Liza has a younger adult. And so we got to see a little bit of the example of the hard work and the championing that young families are doing today, and how that pays off as our children become adults. Liza really highlighted that when she said that her young adult is now working and going to college and taking classes on his own. And I think she really did a great job of sharing that it's his life, not mine, and the effort that she put into making sure that he had a meaningful opportunities as he was growing up. I think that's really a story of inspiration and insight for a lot of young families, and I hope that came across to everyone else. Also, in the spirit of Mother's Day and in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month, I do want to say thank you to all the moms out there, including my own and my wife and our producer, Christina, who's done a lot. All of them have done a lot to help me be the person I am, and I just appreciate each of them and their insight and leadership in my life. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Autism Therapies. And if you have a show suggestion or other feedback, we want to hear from you. Please send us a message on our website at allautismtalk.com. Until next time, take care.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode of All Autism Talk. This podcast is brought to you by Learn Behavioral, the leading network of providers serving children with autism and other special needs. Visit us at learnbehavioral.com. Listen to previous episodes at allautismtalk.com, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. All Autism Talk, connecting the autism community one podcast at a time.